Dirty doctors exposed. We'll hear the story of a young bodybuilder who went in for pectoral implants, but he left with something far different: female breasts. Attorney Spencer Aronfeld, who has some of the biggest medical malpractice cases in Florida. In one, he represented a young bodybuilder who went in for pectoral implants, but he left with something a bit different: female breasts. The dirty work of a fake surgeon dubbed the Butcher of South Beach, and the whole thing was caught. Spencer Aronfeld, you represented some plaintiffs in some of the most heinous malpractices of plastic surgery. One highly publicized case: bodybuilder goes in to have his pec implants a little built up, ends up with female breasts. Take me through this one.
Donnie, the thing you have to remember with this case, which is called the Butcher of South Beach, is that Sylvestre is not a doctor. He's not a plastic surgeon. He has no license to practice medicine in Florida or any place else in the entire world. So what happened to these poor people is they basically got caught up in a fraud that was committed by a guy that was using a scalpel instead of a knife. And what he did is he lured these people into his office, and he did some very bizarre and unfortunate procedures on them using animal anesthesia, not using human anesthesia. And in the case of Mr. Baez, who's a man who's a former Mr. Mexico, this guy dedicated his entire life to perfecting his human form. And when Sylvestre got a hold of him, he anesthetized him with animal anesthesia and then implanted him using kitchen appliances, not using surgical appliances, with female implants. So when Mr. Baez awoke from this procedure, he woke up looking like Pam Anderson instead of looking like Tarzan.
Wow.
And what happened was Sylvestre then fled the country, and he was an international fugitive for about 5 years until he recently was found, deported back to the United States, and is now serving some time right here in Miami in prison.
Spencer, when we hear about sometimes these unlicensed doctors, are these guys that had training for a year someplace? I mean, was this some guy who was a clothing salesman? I mean, how does the guy even get in the position to be a fake doctor?
Some of these guys are learning their surgical techniques by watching the Discovery Channel and watching how people are actually performing procedures. And the sad part is that they prey upon immigrants that come to this country, particularly to Miami, that want to compete. They're competing for jobs. They're competing for personal relationships with people. They want to look good, and they want to meld into society. And unfortunately, these people gravitate to South Florida and gravitate to where there are a large immigrant population. They offer cut rate, no pun intended, cut rate prices. It's not like they're going to Beverly Hills and having a $10,000 breast job done. They're paying $500 cash, $1,000 cash for procedures that would cost far more if they went to real doctors.
That's frightening.
We waited, and then I went to Mr. Aronfeld when I saw Gloria's case on TV, and I wasn't the only one. This is happening, and I want to make a change.
Yeah, you've tried some of the most disgusting cases. The case that to me is almost beyond comprehension, the Gloria Flores case. Another woman went in and the unthinkable happened to her in an emergency room.
Donnie, I think the point that needs to be made here is that people have the perception that they're safe when they're in a hospital or they're in a doctor's office. And the truth is that there are victims of crime that have these types of things happening to them every single day in our country. In Gloria Flores' case, this is a very successful real estate broker that came down to South Beach to enjoy a weekend with her girlfriends. She passed out in a bar and was taken by fire rescue to a hospital. We think maybe someone had slipped her a date rape drug. So while in the hospital, the EMT technicians there fondled her, masturbated upon her, and kissed her inappropriately, playing with her, while other doctors and EMT people watched. And when I first got the call, I said, this is absolutely impossible. This could never have happened in an emergency room in this country. But it happened, as it turns out, the people who did this have confessed to this happening, so we know this occurred. And I think what people think is that, look, you've got a victim laying there who may be in and out of consciousness, or in Christina's situation in a great deal of pain, and nobody's going to believe them. And I think that somebody like Christina really needs to be applauded by coming forward and telling her story. She's hoping to empower other victims.
Spencer, also just final case, another horrible case. These brothers, brothers were doctors, one was, one wasn't.
Donnie, it's like another case of only in Miami, but it happens around the country. One doctor is a doctor, the Nosofsky brother. His brother, Gregorio, is not a doctor, and the doctor, Isaac Nosofsky, was allowing his unlicensed brother to perform medical procedures under his name in his clinic. And they were luring patients in, and the unlicensed doctor was doing all of the work. And unfortunately, in one of the cases we have, some very, very permanent disfigurement was caused in the hands of the unlicensed brother.
When these unlicensed... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I'm saying, like Dr. Griffin said, what's happening these days is that even doctors who have MD after their name think suddenly, poof, I'm a plastic surgeon because I'm a medical doctor. You know, just because you're, you know, a cardiologist or a pulmonologist doesn't mean you know the first thing about doing tummy tucks or breast implants. But I think there's a lot of pressure put on these doctors because of Medicare, and there's all sorts of gatekeepers that are not paying them what they want to get paid, that they're branching out into areas they have no business being.